All right, now that we've practiced working with common rational numbers, working them with doing operations without using a calculator, and reminding us of some of the things that we learned in elementary school, we're now ready to use a calculator to do some of these operations with fractions, decimals, things like that. So here's the I can statement for 4.4. I can perform rational number operations with the help. So write the word help right here, and it's really important that you keep in mind the calculator is just a help, and we're going to talk about that quite a bit here. So in the warm-up it says, what is the difference between putting the following commands into your calculator? Now if you look at this one looks like 2 divided by 12, and this one kind of looks like 2 divided by 12 also, maybe a little bit more in a fraction form. So the first thing you want to know about a calculator is it makes a difference the way you put things in. So if you do this one correctly, if you do 2 divided by 12, it's going to give you a decimal. So let's write decimal right here, and we'll do this one in just a second. And then if you do this one correctly, this one will give you a reduced fraction, or a simplified fraction we sometimes call it. So this will be a reduced fraction. Okay, now we're going to talk about this next paragraph for just a little bit, because this is really important that you understand what your calculator is doing for you. The first thing you need to understand is that the calculator is a very powerful tool. It's a really powerful tool, and what it does is it makes our work easier to complete. It doesn't do our work for us, but it makes it easier for us to complete. This tool can free our minds from tedious calculations so we can concentrate on more complex ideas. Now, if we talk about the word tedious, and I'm going to underline the word tedious right here. Tedious are things like, they're not hard, but they're just annoying. They take a long time. So everybody probably knows how to do 325 times 217. If we were given enough motivation to figure out what the answer was to that, we could get it right every single time, but it's just kind of a pain in the butt. It's nice to have a calculator. Once we've proven that we can do that, we don't want to waste our time and our brain energy figuring out something like that. We just want to be able to move on to the more complex things. So this is what we're working on. We're going to use our calculator to make some tasks easier so that we can use our mind and stretch our brain in different ways. So a calculator should never be viewed as a magic box. So write the word magic right here. It's not a box that we just type stuff in and it just magically gives us the correct answer. It's got a lot of sophisticated stuff in there, but we really need to understand what's going on. In fact, we should always understand what we're putting into our calculator and the work that it's doing for us. And we should always have some idea of what type of answer the calculator is going to give us. So we should have an estimate, a ballpark idea of what's going to happen. Is it going to be positive? Is it going to be negative? And the reason we want to do that is not just to kind of have some mental exercise, because one of the most common mistakes that we're going to make with a calculator is we're going to make what are called input errors. So write the word input right here. If you put the wrong thing in, you're going to get the wrong answer. Now, what I'd never want to hear is I don't want to hear anybody come up and say, well, my calculator said this was the answer. I'm going to say this phrase several times. Remember, your calculator is very good. It's got a lot of cool stuff in it. But if you put garbage in, you will get garbage out. So don't come up and say, well, my calculator said the answer was 3 and you think it's -5. Well, if you put the wrong thing in, you're going to get the wrong thing out. Garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. Okay, so there are a couple things that we want to be aware of on these calculators. Now, this is a TI-30XS Multiview. Very cool calculator, and one of the reasons we use this calculator is it's got some very cool properties. It's got the same type of fraction palette that you're going to use when you use a TI-84. And when you take a computerized based test, it'll do the same type of thing. And I've got a version of this on my computer, which I'll show you here in just a second. So one of the first things that you want to know how to do when you're working with a more complicated calculator than just a regular old, 4-function calculator or scientific calculator is this. There's usually something called a second function key. Now, the second function key is usually pretty easy to find. It says second on it, and what it does is, and the TIs are pretty good about this, and most other brands as well, it's color coded. So when you hit the second function key right here, what it allows you to do is most of these buttons have, see how they have a green word up above them or a green symbol up above them? When you hit the second function, it allows you to access any one of those things up there, and we're going to be doing some of those today. So for instance, if you want to get this button right here, okay, this is not a button, this is actually a second function. It's right up above here. This is actually the mixed number entry key. We're going to use that in just a second. So if you want that one right here, which is above the N and D key, which again we're going to talk about in a second, the first thing we do is we hit the second button, hit that one, and then we're going to hit this guy right here, and that will bring up this menu created by that second function key. All right, so again, we're going to do those in just a second. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the fraction input key. So write the word fraction input keys. So what these allow you to do is they allow you to put in improper fractions, proper fractions, and mixed numbers. So any type of fraction that you can think of, it will allow you to put those in. So I'm going to pull up the calculator right now, and we're going to take a look at what this actually does. Okay, so I've got the calculator up here, and we're going to do this first example. We're going to put in the fraction 1/2. So if we want to put in the fraction 1/2, probably the easiest way to do it is to do this. We're going to input the number 1, so we're going to come over here and we're going to hit a number 1. And notice the calculator highlights the last button that I pushed. So we're going to put a number 1, and then we're going to do the N over D. Now you might want to think for just a second, why would they put an N on the top and a D on the bottom? That's for numerator and denominator. So it's this key right here. No second function, it's just that button right there. You can tell it's a button because of the way I've got it over there. So we're going to hit that button, and notice it has this nice, it's called a fraction palette. It puts the 1 on the top, and then we've got a space on the bottom, and we're going to put a 2. Now it's always a good habit to get in of using the arrow keys and to get outside there, and just make sure that you put the right thing in. So it looks like a 1/2, and we're all set to go. We put it in there, and then that's in the calculator. That's the last answer, is a 1/2. So we're in great shape there. So let's put the next one in. Let's put in 2 3/4. So here's how we put in the 2 3/4. Now this is a mixed number. Okay, so with a mixed number, we've got to grab this guy right here. So this is the unit, the numerator, and the denominator. So we have to hit second and this numerator denominator, the fraction input key here. So take a look, it's the one above here. You might be able to see it a little bit more clearly right here. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to put in a 2 because that's the whole number. Then we want the mixed numbers. So we're going to hit second. Then we're going to hit the fraction input, and notice how it brings up that fraction right there, and it puts that 2 out in front. So we're going to put a 3 on the top, we're going to go down, and we're going to put a 4 on the bottom. We're going to go over until we're out of this, and then you can see that it says 2 3/4, and we hit enter, and we're all set to go. Now the calculator automatically makes this 11/4. It knows that we like improper fractions, so it's automatically going to change it and put it in like that. So we've got 11/4. Now I also want to do this. Let's take this and let's do it from the get-go. Let's just hit second and then the fraction input. Notice how we've got this palette here. So we've got a 2, hop up here on the top, then we've got our 3, hop down here on the bottom, then we've got our 4, and like I said, always a good idea to get outside there, take a look, make sure that you did that right, hit enter, and there's our 11/4. Okay, so we're all set there. We can type those in, it automatically changes this. I do want to show you something else though, along with, again, and I've mentioned this a couple times, it's a good habit to hit that right arrow key to get out of the fraction before hitting enter. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to do, let's do 5, and then let's hit the mixed number input, and I'm going to put in 9 on the top and 12 on the bottom. Now, whoops, come back here, overwrite that. We need a 12 there. Okay, and then I want to hop outside there. So I want the fraction 5 and 9/12. So this is a mixed number. Now you'll notice that this is not reduced. So let's go ahead and hit enter and see what the calculator does for us. You'll notice that that automatically reduces it to 4ths. It knows that this is going to be 3/4. So if that were 5 3/4, in fact, let me write that over here. 5 3/4, we'd multiply here. That's going to be 5 times 4 is 20 plus 3. That's going to be 23/4. Okay, so it knows what we want there. Okay, now if we did say want an actual mixed number, then we use this key right here. So you'll notice that this is in green, so this is going to be the mixed number 2 improper fraction. So mixed number to improper fraction conversion key, and it's right above there. It's above the times 10 to the power of n, okay, and you don't need to worry about that one, but it's right above here. So here's what we're going to do. It says numerator denominator to unit in numerator and denominator. So here's what's going to happen. We're going to hit the second function, and we're going to hit that. So notice what comes up. Now the cool thing about this double arrow is the calculator knows if you've got a mixed number or an improper fraction in there. So we're going to go ahead and hit enter, and there it shows us the 5 3/4. If we want to go the other way, now let me just see what happens if I hit enter again. Okay, it brings that up. So it's the same thing again. So here's what we've got to do. I want to change that mixed number into an improper fraction. So I'm going to hit second, mixed number to improper fraction conversion, and it knows which is which. So it knows in the calculator is a mixed number. We're going to hit enter. It's going to change it into that improper fraction. So we're all set to go there. Okay, so we've got fraction input, mixed number input, then we've got the mixed number to improper conversion. Then we've got this one. This says F double arrow D. Well, you might be able to guess what that does. That changes from a fraction to a decimal or vice versa. So fraction to decimal conversion, and it will go back and forth. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take that last number that we had right there, and we're going to change that into a decimal. So right above here, right above the table, notice it's above there in green. So I'm going to hit second, and it's going to go from fraction to decimal, or if it was a decimal, it'll change it back to a fraction. So we're going to hit enter, 5.75, and we're all set to go. Okay, now just for the heck of it, I'm going to clear this off, and we're going to type in the stuff that we started with. So remember, at the beginning of the lesson, we talked about doing 2 divided by 12, and it should give us a decimal, and then 2 over 12 should give us a reduced fraction. So let's hit 2 divided by 12, and we're going to hit enter, and it's going to give us that right there. And the other one, we want to put in a fraction, so we're going to do, so remember, this is 0.16 with a whole bunch of sixes, and then that 7's there because of rounding. So let's put in a fraction. Let's put in the 2/12. So I'm going to hit second. Whoops, we don't need the second. We just need just the regular old fraction. 2 on the top, 12 on the bottom. Hop outside there, make sure it looks right, and we get 1/6. Now, what I'd like to do is let's use that fraction to decimal conversion and just make sure that we got this right. So remember, 2 divided by 12 is 0.16 repeated, and 2/12 is 1/6. Let's just check and see. So we're going to hit second, fraction to decimal. It was a fraction, now it made it as a decimal. So we're all set to go there. And just in case you're wondering, I'm going to do the same thing again. It's going to take the 0.16 repeated, change from a decimal to a fraction, and there we're right back at the 1/6. Okay, let me slide down here and let's take a look at a couple of these. Now, there is one more key that a lot of calculators do not have. It's this answer toggle key, and what it allows you to do is it allows you to toggle back and forth between an exact answer and a decimal approximation. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take 6/9 and we're going to put this in here. Now, you don't have to clear things off, but if you want to, you can clear it off. So I'm going to hit that button right there, and we're going to type in 6 on the top, and we're going to put 9 on the bottom. And just like I said before, you should know what the calculator is going to do. It's going to take that and it's going to reduce it. Now, if you wanted to take that and you could wanted to change it to a decimal, we can probably hit this guy right here, that second fraction to decimal conversion. Now, there are times when we can do this. So I'm going to hit enter. And what it does is, on this right here, on this answer toggle key, it will go back and forth. It knows if you want to go from an exact answer like 2/3 to a decimal approximation of 0.6 repeated. And here's the other cool thing. I'm going to hit it again. Okay? And it will just keep going back and forth. Now, some places where this is going to be really helpful is you're going to eventually deal with circles and really ugly numbers like pi and the number e and all sorts of stuff. Your calculator has the number pi on it. So I'm going to hit clear, and I'm going to hit the number pi, and I'm going to hit enter. Well, it just says it's the number pi. Well, that's fantastic. It's just a symbol. But what if you wanted to know what it was equal to as a decimal? Well, guess what? Hit that toggle key, and there it is, 3.141592654, blah, 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 continues to go on forever. So that toggle key can be really helpful. So let's come down here, and we're actually going to take a look at a couple of these problems and just work through these. So I'm going to clear this off, and this is -18 plus 492. Now, here's what you've got to be careful with. The calculator understands there's a difference between a negative meaning the sign of a number, meaning it's the opposite of what the positive was, and the operation of subtracting. So if we put this in here, if we go negative 18 and then we add 492, hit enter, and we get an answer. So we get 474. So 474 is the answer right there. Okay, now I'm going to show you how you can mess something like this up and what your calculator is going to give you. So I'm going to do the next one, and again, I don't have to clear this off, so I'm going to hit negative 54. I'm going to hit plus. The parentheses above are above the 8 and 9, so I'm going to hit plus, and then I'm going to write this. Okay, I'm going to write a minus, and then I'm going to do a 19, and then I'm going to close the parentheses. Again, take a look. This looks a heck of a lot like that right there. Okay, but what I've done here is the calculator says I've done a plus and a minus, an addition and a subtraction right next to each other, and watch what it's going to do. It's going to tell me there's a syntax error. Okay, so I'm going to hit clear. I'm going to go back here, and it shows me right where the problem is. The problem is right where I put that minus, and it should have been a negative. So I'm going to replace that with a negative. So I'm going to put that negative right here, and as I do, watch what happens. Keep your eye on that minus, and watch what happens when I change it to a negative right now. A negative is smaller, and it's written up one line above the middle, just one pixel line up above there. Now when I hit enter, it's going to give me the right answer of negative 73. So this is going to be negative 73 right there. Now, if we were smart, we probably wouldn't even do this. We'd just count this as a positive times a negative is a negative. So we'd do negative 54, and we'd do minus 19. Now that is a minus. Hit enter, and we get the same answer either way. Okay, let's do this guy right here. So notice that this is put in as a fraction. Now this might be kind of interesting. Let's go ahead and put it in as a fraction, and let's see what happens. So this is negative 0.74 on the top, and then on the bottom, look how scrunched that gets, and then a negative 80 on the bottom. So I'm going to hop outside there, make sure that that looks right, and hit enter. And what it does is it gives me an answer of 0.00925. So I'm going to write down 0.00925. And I'm going to circle that. Now, what if I said, gosh, you know what, I'd really like that to be a fraction. Let's try and make the calculator change that into a fraction. So the fraction decimal key is right here. So I'm going to hit second, fraction decimal. So it knows we've got a fraction, and it knows a decimal, and it knows we want to change that to a fraction. Watch what it does. Can't handle it. Okay, can't take that and change it into a fraction. So we're going to be stuck with that. So there are times where we might overwhelm the capabilities of the calculator. So let's take a look at this one right here. The next one is negative 9.576, and we are going to divide that by 0.025. Now again, always double check and make sure that you've got the number typed in correctly. Looks like I've got it in there the right way. I've got a negative here. We're all set to go. Now take a guess at what the answer is going to be. First of all, it's going to be a negative divided by a positive, so it's going to be a negative. And we are dividing around 10 by a teeny tiny number. When you take a big number and divide it by a relatively small number, we end up with a gigantic number. So there's the negative like we expect, and it's negative 383.04. We're going to circle that, and we're all set. Okay, so again, before you hit enter on your calculator, have an idea of whether or not it's going to be a big number, a small number, positive, negative, different things like that, so you have an idea of whether or not you've made some input errors. Okay, so we're going to come down here and we're going to take a look at this guy right here. So I'm going to clear this off, and we're going to do negative 18, and then we want to do a mixed number, so we're going to do that right there. So notice how it drops it down and puts that right in the middle there. So we're going to do a 5 on the top, 6 on the bottom, hop outside. I'm going to do a minus and then a set of parentheses, and remember this is going to be a negative, so I need to put a negative right there. Notice you can see them right next to each other and the difference they make. So I'm going to do this one a little bit differently. I'm going to hit the mixed number input. I'm going to put a 4 right there, so there's my negative 4. Hop on the top, there's a 2. Hop on the bottom, there's an 11. Hop outside. You want to get all the way outside, and then just for the heck of it, to make things look nice, we're going to close the parentheses. So here's what we get. Make sure that it looks exactly the same. Notice that this is going to be a negative times a negative, so we should end up adding. In fact, we could have just written plus 4 and 2/11 would have given us the same answer. So we're expecting a negative answer, but it shouldn't be quite as big as negative 18. So let's hit enter. And notice what it does here. It gives us an improper fraction, which is what we want. Once we get past elementary school, we like improper fractions. We like reduced improper fractions. We don't like working with mixed numbers. They're kind of a pain. So we end up with negative 967 over 66. Now, imagine how tedious that would be to do that by hand. Could you get a common denominator with 6 and 11? My gosh, it would be 66. We could get a common denominator and do the whole thing, but that would just be a total hassle. Okay, so let's take a look at the next one. I'm going to put in a negative. Again, make sure it's negative. And we're going to do a 7. We're going to do the fraction input. We've got a 20 on the bottom. Whoops. Oh, whoops. Let's see. There's my 7. There is the fraction input. Should be a little more careful with the buttons I hit. And then there's a plus 5 fraction input, and on the bottom is a 22. Okay, hop outside there. Looks like we're in good shape. Looks correct. So I'm going to hit enter. The answer is negative 27 over 220. So negative 27 over 220. So if you're getting the idea here, then you're doing great. Okay, I do want to take a look at C before we go on and do these last two, because these last two there's some pretty interesting ones. Okay, oh, one other thing I forgot to mention here. Watch what happens if I try and put a minus right here. If I do a minus, it automatically grabs the last answer, so I know that I've done something wrong. It's trying to take the answer and then subtract something. Okay, so I'm going to clear this off, and let's put in negative. We're going to put in that fraction. We've got a 12 on the top. We got an 11 on the bottom. Hop over here. We're going to do plus a negative. Now, if you want, you could put that. It would just be way easier to do positive times negative is a negative. I'm going to go ahead and put a plus, put a minus, so it looks exactly like that. I'm going to do that mixed number input. So we've got a 3, we've got an 11, and we've got a 15 on the bottom. Hop outside, make sure that it looks right, hit enter, and we get negative 796 over 165. So negative 796 over 165. Now, if you have not seen this before, I want to show you something. Okay, I'm going to hop up here, and I'm going to grab onto those guys right here. Okay, and I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to hop over here, and I'm going to come back here. What I just did is I just grabbed that, and I said basically I want to edit. So once I hop on there, I can hit enter, and it will allow me to edit that. So I'm going to hop over here, and I'm going to change this. Positive times a negative is just a minus. So I'm going to write a minus, and then I'm going to delete. The delete is right here. So I'm going to hit delete. And now instead of negative 12 elevenths plus negative 3 and 11 fifteenths, I've just got negative 12 elevenths minus 3 and 11 fifteenths. And watch what happens. We already know what the answer is, and we get exactly the same thing. So if you want to shorten something up like that, that's totally okay. We're going to talk about the insert key in just a second, so don't forget, the delete button is right here, the insert is right above it. So the next one is kind of interesting. We've got 10.8, and notice the bar above the 8, and then we're going to divide by 4 2/5. So here's how you make the calculator know that that goes on forever. You have to fill the entire screen with 8s. Now, once it's filled with 8s, the calculator gets the idea. It realizes, oh, this is going to be 8 forever. Then we're going to hit divide, and then we're going to do the 4 second fraction input. So we're going to do that mixed number, and we're going to do a 2 on the top, and we're going to do a 5 on the bottom. Hop on the outside. Now see how we've filled up the screen with 8s? It knows what to do with that. So we've got 2.477. Now the reason it gave us a decimal answer is because we put one of them in as a decimal. So if you wanted to write that down, because the problem's written with a decimal, you could do that. So 2.47, and notice 474747, and then this is a 5. The reason that's a 5 is because the next, it would be a 4 and then a 7. That 7 off the screen is enough to round up. So it would be this, or let's change this to a fraction. Now I'm going to try this. I don't know if this will work. Let's hit that toggle key. Holy cow, that quick. We didn't have to do the fraction to decimal. So sometimes that works, sometimes it won't. It ends up being 245 over 99. So 245 over 99. Now of these two, whoops, 245. Let me make that a 5. 245 over 99. Of these two, the fraction is definitely the better one. Okay, it's a little bit more precise. It's just easier to write down. We don't have to worry about what parts repeat and what parts don't and stuff like that. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the very last one. If you want to go ahead and type that in yourself, you're welcome to. I'm going to clear this off. Again, that's a negative, so we're going to hit negative 56.4. Fill up the screens with 8s. As long as it's filled, then you're all set. Then we're going to do plus, and then we've got this 15. We want to do a mixed number, and we've got 1 on the top, and we've got 2 on the bottom. Hit the 2, hop on the outside, make sure things look nice, and then we're going to hit enter. Okay, so there's the answer. So it's going to be negative 40.988888, and rather than write that, I am going to write that down just for the heck of it, just so we have track of it. 988888. Okay, or I could just do this, a 9 and an 8 with a bar over it. That would be okay. Let's make the calculator change this for us. So if we get lucky, let's see what it'll do. Oh, there we go. Just hit that toggle key. So we've got negative 3689, negative 3689 over 90. And my gosh, that would be tedious, but look what our calculator spits out. So we're all set to go with that. All right, I think we've got everything taken care of. I do want to show you one more quick thing, actually 2 more quick things. Watch what happens if I do this, negative 40.9. Let's fill up the screens with 8s. Okay? And then I'm going to do the fraction to decimal conversion, and look what it tells us. Okay, 3689 over 90, so it gives us the right answer there. Okay, now I want to show you one more thing, and that's this. Let's say we go back up here, we find something that we were working on, and we wanted to edit it. Okay, so I'm going to grab one of these guys way back here. I'm going to grab that one. I'm going to hit enter. Okay, let's say that on this one I wanted to make this a 13 rather than a 3. So I'm going to hop on there, and I could just start typing a 13, but it will overwrite everything, push it out of the way and stuff like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit second delete, which is going to insert. And what insert does is, just like on a computer, it inserts things, it pushes things out of the way. So I'm going to push a 3 right here, and then I can hop to the end. So I've got the negative 12/11 minus 13 and 11/5 rather than the 3 and 11/5, and then I can hit enter. And again, that's the insert key. So all of those come in handy. So hopefully going through some of the functions of this calculator and showing you how those work has been helpful. Good luck on the homework. If you have a calculator that's different than this, there are some other tutorials online. I've got one for a TI-30X-IIS, but this is a really good calculator. Highly recommend you get one of these. They're about $13 on Walmart.com. All right, good luck.